10 years since Enron and the corporate scandals, and they keep on coming. So what should business schools be teaching our future executives? Joining us is Dean David Ikenberry of the University of Colorado Leeds School of Business. Dean, it's good to see you. And if you stay long enough, you will see Chanos come into the green room, who was the guy with Enron. And I think what Chanos talked to Bethany about stuff he was looking at, right?
Yeah.
And it all, the rest is history. Mm-hmm. You have a unique perspective because you were in Houston for 10 years?
I was there for 12 years, Joe. I was a young assistant professor at Rice University and saw both the rise and fall of that formerly great company.
Yeah, and now you are in a position to take curriculum and try to instill something in these students, in graduate students, I guess, that would preclude these things from happening, but it's not working.
Well, Joe, we're just getting started at it.
At CU.
Yeah, at CU, well, across the country.
Across the country.
The economics, the accounting, the finance, all of those basics are key. But I think the other thing we're learning is that the role of culture, particularly from the top, as that rolls through the organization, it can change the way we think. So, what we've learned in the last few years is that having one little course here or one little course there where you think about ethics or corporate governance in a segregated way, that's probably too difficult and maybe not an effective way to do it.
So instead of a guy taking an ethics course for a semester, it should be in every single class.
We try to weave it through almost everything we do. So, for example, if you're talking about, say the role of stock options, while you're doing the alphas and the Greeks on that, you also take some time to say, well, what are the limitations of this type of approach, and where can the breakdowns begin? There's a little bit also here of the old Rumsfeldian quote of, we know what we don't know, and sometimes we don't know what we don't know when it comes to incentives and the role of economics. What we're trying to do in Colorado, and what I think you're going to see around the country, is a more deliberate approach to understand what the limitations of our traditional, classical models of finance and accounting are, and try to have more candid and open dialogue of how culture and incentives can roll through a whole organization, both for good and for bad.
Yeah, I mean, we had, trying to think, Enron, and WorldCom, and Tyco, and then we had 2008. Now we have MF Global, and we had,
MF Global is a blip. The only reason we care about
it's a
MF
blip,
Global
but why don't we learn anything? Why don't
the second biggest bankruptcy?
Yeah, and how come? Yeah,
I'm sorry, seventh biggest.
Yeah, how
bankruptcy,
come regulators either are still asleep at the switch, or we don't have the right? We keep trying for the right, more regulations. We keep layering them on.
This one should have been preventable, right?
We're going through. We've learned a lot in the last decade or so. And the other issue you've got is a rising economic tide will cover up a lot of these problems. So as we go into a recession, you're going to learn a lot of things that you don't particularly want to see. You're going to see problems. But going back to Enron, I reflect on how many great people were in that company. My own students, for example, went to work there, and how incentives that filter down through the top can create real problems. For example, at that particular company, you had an earnings-centric organization. But what's wrong with that? Increasing earnings is what we teach in all our classes. Right. But if you create a hyperbolic, high-intensity organization where it's earnings and only earnings, then all of a sudden other things, other incentive problems creep into the system. And at the end of the day, you saw the real tragic consequence of not taking a more holistic approach, thinking through what are all the spillover effects, and how do we lead the organization in a better, more enlightened way. Also understanding that companies have a huge impact on the societies that they're embedded in, both for good and for bad. I think we're doing a better job of teaching all of our students, not just our graduate students, but you have to remember that a lot of our undergraduate business students will never go on and get graduate degrees. So we're actually taking this all the way down into our undergraduate program.
You've done a lot of work in your career on dividend policy, share repurchase that came to you. But your point is that it came to a halt a couple of years ago.
It did crash. Not surprisingly. There was a period of time where we were not sure the capital markets were even going to continue to function. Right. So it makes a lot of sense when you don't know where your cash flows are coming that you crimp things off. both on the dividend side and share repurchase side. I think the good news is this year we're seeing a lot more activity. Ford Motor just put a dividend back in place.
Right.
And you're seeing share repurchases come back online. We're back where we are in an aggregate sense where we were about in '05 and '06. To me, that's a real healthy sign. Obviously, there's a contrarian view of, hey, why aren't we throwing this into CapEx? But it's a suggestion that our treasurers and our CEOs are comfortable with our capital markets.
Right. Great.
Fascinating. I'm fascinated by this.
You are.
I'm fascinated by ethics and whether you can actually teach ethics and whether when people show up at school, whether they come in understanding right and wrong and whether they can leave understanding a different version of right and wrong.
It's a counterfactual thing, though, because you would say, obviously it doesn't work because we've been trying to do it for a while and look what's happened. But then again, maybe there'd be even
Who knows
more
what it'd be like,
scandal,
yeah.
right?
You can put a context. You can help people understand and sensitize them to, hey, there's a little bit more to this story than I think. And that's what we are really trying to do in our classrooms.